Hello. Today we are talking about the Japanese novel The Key by Junichiro Tanizaki, published in Japanese in 1956, published in English 5 years later, 1961, with the wonderful translation by Howard Hibbett, who seems to be quite a prolific translator of Japanese literature. Thank you, Mr. Hibbett. My goodness, what a dirty story this is. If you're a fan of salacious literature, here's a book for you. Let's begin with the four principal characters. Middle-aged man, 55 years of age. I think in the novel he goes unnamed, but apparently his name is Kenmochi. His wife, who is 10 years younger than he is, that's Ikuko. And they have a daughter, Toshiko. And there is a fourth member of this little deviant quartet, and his name is Kimura. This novel it's basically two diaries. It is the diary of the husband, the 55-year-old man, and it is the diary of his wife, Ikuko. They're not very happy with the sexual livelihood of their marital bed, to use a quaint phrase. I'll read you a little bit of his first diary entry, and I will read you a bit of her first diary entry, and it will become quite clear immediately why they don't get along very well these days. First chapter of the novel, New Year's Day. This year, I intend to begin writing freely about a topic which, in the past, I've hesitated even to mention here. I have always avoided commenting on my sexual relations with Ikuko, for fear that she might surreptitiously read my diary and be offended. I dare say she knows exactly where to find it, but I've decided not to worry about that anymore. Of course, her old-fashioned Kyoto upbringing has left her with a good deal of antiquated morality. Indeed, she rather prides herself on it. It seems unlikely that she would not dip into her husband's private writings. However, that is not altogether out of the question. If now, for the first time, my diary becomes chiefly concerned with our sexual life, will she be able to resist the temptation? By nature, she is furtive, fond of secrets, constantly holding back and pretending ignorance. Worst of all, she regards that as feminine modesty. Even though I have several hiding places for the key to the locked drawer where I keep this book, such a woman may well have searched out all of them. For that matter, you could easily buy a duplicate of the key. And he ends this first diary entry thusly. She clings to her feminine modesty and refuses to yield. Moreover, she knows that I am something of a foot fetishist, and that I admire her extraordinarily shapely feet. One can hardly think of them as belonging to a middle-aged woman. The main character has some definite, specific complaints about his wife's sexual enthusiasm. Now, but let's hear what she has to say for herself in regards to her husband. So she tells us in her first diary entry that she notices that her husband is keeping a diary. She tells us very plainly and matter-of-factly that she will never look into his diary. Under no circumstances is she going to degrade herself by reading his private thoughts. But in a kind of a retaliation, she's going to start keeping her own diary, knowing her husband's proclivities. She's going to keep it very, very hidden, and she's going to make it so that she will be aware if her husband ever opens her diary. She's going to put some tape on it, and that way if he ever tries to remove the tape, she'll notice that the cover has been marked by the tape. She is fully aware that her husband thinks she is quite inhibited in the bedroom, but there's nothing she can do about it. Although it's not just her conservative Kyoto upbringing. That's not entirely it, as we learn here in this passage. I've begun to think our marriage was a dreadful mistake. There must have been a better partner for me, and for him too. We simply can't agree in our sexual tastes. I married him because my parents wanted me to, and for all these years I thought marriage was supposed to be like this. But now I have the feeling that I accepted a man who is utterly wrong for me. Of course, I have to put up with him since he's my lawful husband. Sometimes, though, the very sight of him makes me queasy. Yes, and that feeling isn't new. I had it the first night of our marriage, that long ago honeymoon night when I first went to bed with him. I still remember how I winced when I saw his face after he'd taken off those thick-lensed glasses of his. People who wear glasses always look a little strange without them. and my husband's face seemed suddenly ashen, like a dead man's. Then he leaned down close, and I felt his eyes boring into me. I couldn't help starting back, blinking, and the moment I saw that smooth, slippery, waxy skin, I winced again. Though I hadn't noticed it in the daytime, I could see a faint growth of beard under his nose and around his lips. He's inclined to be hairy, and that too made me feel vaguely ill. I turned off the bed lamp to avoid seeing him, but that's precisely when he wants it on. And then he wants to pore over my body as minutely as possible. I try to refuse him, but he's so persistent about my feet in particular that I have to let him look at them. I've never been intimate with another man. I wonder if they all have such disgusting habits. Are those gross, sticky, nasty caresses what you have to expect from all men? What we learn about this couple, their relationship, is that the husband is quite afraid of his diminishing sexual vigor. He feels that he's got to try to stimulate himself sexually in odder and odder ways to be vigorous, like a young man, jackhammer. And he's raging against his conservative wife because he feels that her not allowing him to be a bit, kinky, that she's causing his sexuality to be less potent. But she can't help herself because she feels that he's being weird and she finds him physically repulsive. So now, let's talk about the other people in the story. There is the daughter, Toshiko. Now, Toshiko doesn't make much of an appearance, but she plays a significant part of the story. And then there's Kimura. Kimura, it seems, is pursuing Toshiko, their daughter. They go to movies together, they have dinner together, but Ikuko, the mother, goes with them as a bit of a chaperone. One night, Mr. Kimura brings over a bottle of brandy. Now, Toshiko doesn't like this very much, and she goes off to bed, and so Kimura stays up drinking with the middle-aged couple. And they all get quite drunk. During this drinking session, Ikuko wanders off because, she doesn't want to show that she's drunk. You drink, and you try not to show anyone how drunk you actually are. That's the secret. Is that still the way? I think it is. So she goes off to kind of sober herself up. She gets into the bath with, just her sort of underclothes on. Underneath the kimono, there's sort of like a thinner kind of underwear kimono. And so she gets into the bath wearing this skimpy kimono. And eventually when the men realize, what happened to Ikuko, and they go to find her and she's pretty much passed out, hanging on to the side of the bath. They're really quite worried, what's happened to her? And they pull her out of the bath, they undress her, she's naked, and they put a sheet over her and they call the doctor, and the doctor comes and gives her an injection of vitamins. That's something that happens quite frequently in Tanizaki's novels. In every single novel I've read, Tanizaki has this thing about people getting injected with vitamins. Once Mr. Kimura has left, and once the doctor has left, and once he's pretty sure that Toshiko has fallen asleep, he turns on all of the lights and he takes off all of his wife's clothes, and she's completely passed out, and he does what he's always wanted to do. He looks at her very closely. That's not all he does, but let's let your imagination do the rest. And guess what happens? This brandy drinking session with Mr. Kimura happens more and more frequently. Ikuko often goes off to the bath and passes out, and they have to pull her out. The same thing happens over and over, and this man really loves it when his wife is completely unconscious and passed out. It's really quite, I'll let you choose your own word. I think that I'll stop there with the plot because this is not a very long novel. It's only 127 pages. It's very easy to read. It's quite fun to read if you're a fan of sexual depravity. It's not graphic, it's not grotesque, it's not erotica, but it's quite plainly deviant. But there's a lot of interesting questions that we need to ask. Why is Mr. Kimura, who seems to be pursuing the daughter, why does the husband think that he is so interested in his wife? And this is a major part of the story, is because one thing that turns on the 55-year-old man, Kenmochi, is his jealousy towards Mr. Kimura. In spite of the fact that he was the one who has brought this stranger into their sexual antics, he feels tremendous jealousy against this man. And he often writes in his diary, wondering about the degree of attraction his wife feels for this man who's come into the relationship. But you can't blame the wife or Mr. Kimura in this instance. It's because this man has not only invited this stranger into their relationship, but has really embroiled him in this weird little scenario that they have going. In spite of that all, he feels the jealousy, and that jealousy causes him to be more sexually aroused. And what about the wife? What kind of a transformation does she go through? Her story is very, very interesting. The book starts off a lot more heavily on the husband's diary. Somewhere towards the middle and towards the end of the novel, it becomes more about her diary. And that shift in the narrator of what's going on makes quite a big difference, and it provokes a lot of very interesting and exciting questions. I have to say I didn't love this book. I thought it was a bit smutty. Not that I'm conservative or a prude, it's just that it's not an easy book to really enjoy with a lot of enthusiasm when this man is putting his wife into this very harrowing experience. But the questions that I was asking about these characters, like why does this man need to feel this jealousy to become aroused? What is this unusual transformation that his wife begins to go through? And why is Kimura-san allowing himself to be a part of this weird little union? And then, of course, there's all of the questions that surround the daughter, Toshiko. How much does she know? How much is she complicit in what happens? And what will she do in regards to her parents and this man who seemed to be her suitor, who seems to change his allegiances partway through the novel? Quite a wonderful book that it really provokes a lot of discussion. You could really have a lot of fun reading this book with a few of your friends to wonder what was happening with Toshiko. Why did she go along with these things, and how much was she also an instigator in this scenario? I'll tell you a little bit about Tanizaki. Junichiro Tanizaki was born in 1886 in the heart of downtown Tokyo, where his family owned a printing establishment. He studied Japanese literature at Tokyo Imperial University. His early novels suggest that his student days were ostentatiously bohemian. What a nice phrase that is. Ostentatiously bohemian. At the time, he was strongly influenced by Poe, Baudelaire, and Oscar Wilde. He lived in the cosmopolitan Tokyo area until the earthquake in 1923, when he moved to the gentler and more cultured Kyoto-Osaka region, the scene of the Makioka sisters, which is my favorite Japanese novel of all time. I won't say that Tanizaki is my favorite Japanese writer, but he did write what I think is the greatest Japanese novel, The Makioka Sisters. There, he became absorbed in the Japanese past and abandoned his superficial westernization. Japanese critics agree that this intellectual and emotional crisis changed him from merely a very good writer to a great one. Book lottery. I hope this one is going to go to the right person, because if you're not ready for something like this, I can't imagine you'd be happy. Well, if you're supporting my channel on Patreon, I guess you're really ready for something like this. I have a Patreon page. I'm posting a weekly blog. I post the videos early. One of the main things I talk about is the books that I'm reading and the videos I'm making and how I feel about the process. If you support me for $5 a month, your name goes in here. I pull out a name. You win this. As well, you win this. The Friend from Budapest by Grant Shipway, and The Friend from Budapest Part 2 by Grant Shipway. That's my writing, and it's excellent. You win that lovely package. I'll mail it to you wherever you are, even New Zealand. Right, Barry? Christopher, where are you? You live somewhere funny. Alabama. Christopher told me that he lives in a small conservative city in Alabama. I'm very happy to be sending you this. Yeah, I chose the right name this time. You'll be getting The Key by Junichiro Tanizaki. It's weird. Not weird. It's fundamentally, it is about a couple who are having relationship troubles, that they're not on the same wavelength sexually. Okay, congratulations, Christopher. I'll be mailing all of that to you. Could you please write to me at my grantlovesbooks@gmail.com and send me your mailing address again. You've sent it to me in the past, but send it to me one more time. And I'll be mailing that to you ASAP. You know, in a couple of years, I'll be moving to Japan, and maybe I'll be lucky enough to read it in the original Japanese language. With that vertical writing. Won't that be a joy? In another language, in a completely different style. That will be fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. This is Grant Loves Books. Please like and subscribe. Of course, I've always got to throw that in at the end, but well, now that only 10% of you are still watching. Okay, take care. It's really quite, well, I'll let you choose your own word.